Hey everyone, thank you for coming to see my talk. I apologize if any of you were coming for the Node.js talk. There was a swap last minute, so if you came for Node and now you're getting my talk, which is WordPress to React, I apologize. So, like I said, thank you for the introduction. I work at FabFitFun. I'm the lead senior software engineer on the Box and Member Experience team. So that's our Box subscription service. If you guys haven't heard of FabFitFun, I'm sure many of the ladies have heard of it. We're a fashion women's lifestyle brand. So we do some pretty cool stuff there. We've got a lot more than the box, but that's kind of my domain. You can find me at Code Career Coach, and I started a website, codecareercoach.com, and it sounds like it's for tech, but I actually am obsessed with soft skills. I listen to a podcast, Soft Skills Engineering, if you guys have heard of it. It's pretty cool. And I was kind of inspired by Jameis and Dance with the work that they do, because I feel that soft skills are really important. So what I wanted to do was share some of my kind of, how do you get started? Everyone's talking about how do I build a whatever in whatever. I wanted to make a place for how do I get a job? How do I decorate my resume? How do I build a portfolio? What kind of company questions should I ask employers when I get an interview? Right? People go into interviews thinking that they should just be on their best behavior, but it's for you to interview the company as well. So please visit my website, and I'm on Twitter and GitHub as well. So my background, I apologize. I told Ben that I wanted to immediately delete this slide. As soon as he had, I was like, oh God. But I'm just going to talk here for a bit because I have to kind of preface as to where I'm taking you on this journey over the last year. So just a quick intro. I started as a junior web dev in '98. I went to Redondo High School, and they had a small ISP there called BeachNet, and that's where I got my first taste of HTML. And back then, you modified HTML, JavaScript, and CSS by telnetting directly into the server and making the modifications live. So you literally did it like that second, and I've taken the site down many, many times. But it was a good way to learn and stay on my toes. So Flash became the hot thing, as you guys may have noticed. It made me a lot of money. I'm sorry. I have no shame working in the ActionScript space. It paid really, really well. And at the time, more than JavaScript. So I'm sorry. By 2016, Flash, as you guys know, was on its way out, and JavaScript was like the really hot thing. And I was like, okay, I can maintain my salary and jump to JavaScript. All right, I'm in. So I went to AngularJS, and that was like a great segue from ActionScript. It felt like home to me. They were both object-oriented, and so I could switch that paradigm. But I jumped on AngularJS like pretty much when everyone was starting to talk about React. So I got my first job at a fintech company doing AngularJS, and everyone was like, boo, Angular sucks. So it's okay, I was new. I was like, all right, I got a job. At least I'm going to stay employed. That's fine. And then I moved to 2 other jobs after that. The second one was in React, and then the one that I'm at now is React-based. And so this is where I want to just give my last bit on this slide, which is I came into this job. I was really excited at the opportunity to work at FabFitFun, and I thought I was going to work on React. And when I was going through the interview test was in React, and we did pair programming in React, and the whiteboarding was in React, and we did lots of questions in React. So I didn't really ask any questions about what our current tech stack was. I just assumed that I was going to be working in React, right? So I get there, and the first day I'm given a Docker container, and it's a monolithic WordPress site, and I'm told, well, yeah, it's just PHP. Can't you work in PHP? And this was me for about the first couple of weeks. I was like, oh God. And I said, well, aren't we going to do React? And everyone was like, yeah, React's like the cool new thing. We want to do React. And I was like, okay, when can we do it? I don't want to work in this. and the Docker was really slow, and I mean, literally, just to load up the WordPress site on your machine and run the entire stack was, I could maybe fall asleep. I would literally nod off at my desk, just waiting for the page to load. So it was very painful, and I said, there's got to be a way. No one has thought of a migration path to get off WordPress, and no one has. Everyone's just kind of stayed the course, just like this gentleman has in his room drinking coffee. This is fine. So I came up with a half measure, and I said, okay, we don't have a lot of time. I can't rebuild WordPress in React. There's a ton of features that they were, leveraging, lots of analytics, lots of, sort of custom WYSIWIG things. It was like huge. I mean, they were utilizing WordPress to its full potential and then some. They started with an offshore team. Before they had an in-house tech team, and so the offshore team had more domain knowledge than we did. And so we were just building the in-house tech team and just learning from the overseas team, spending late night hours, because that's when they're awake, right? Learning, trying to get domain knowledge. Where do I fix this thing? And I said, okay, we've got this small project. Can I just use it as a pet project? And can we do something where it's like, can I think of a way that maybe we can start to pick out pieces of the WordPress page and just kind of embed React? At least the new stuff that we're building can be in React, and that we don't have to throw away, right? Can we move forward? And so I thought, look, I don't have to think about authentication. If I can bake React inside a WordPress page and just have like the header and footer, then that would be great. So I came up with this page. This is the first page that we launched on the site that was in React last year. It was like our Springbox showcase page. And essentially, it basically just went, you guys can't see my mouse, but basically where the pink starts and goes down is React, and from the pink up is WordPress, right? So that's all handling our authentication, and that's basically, and I can show you the site. It's right here. Let me exit out of this. So here's the site. Just to give you, oh, it's not presenting. How do I switch to show the, oh, is it the extended display? Sorry, bear with me. It's really cool. I want to show you guys. Display. Oh, mirror. There we go. Cool. So this is the site. There's no like external links that go to it, so it's sort of dead in the water, but I kept it around just so that I could continue to sort of push the chariot and show my, like, we can do this. We can make this happen. And to start, it didn't really have any benefit to the customer because they still had to load WordPress, right? So because of this header bar and the authentication, and we hadn't done the authentication stuff yet, they still had to load everything that comes with WordPress. All the plugins come with it. Everything comes with it. So you still have that whole overhead, and then you're loading React afterwards. So this was a benefit to me. I said, look, okay, we're not getting any performance benchmarks out of this, but at least it's not throwaway code. We can like move forward. So going back to my slides, sorry. So I released this blog of how I did it, and it actually got, on Medium, it got a little bit of traction, and I was surprised to see how many people were actually suffering through the same thing that I was suffering through. And I was getting lots of questions on my Medium post, and I was trying as best as I could to help. It was actually my first Medium post, but I just thought that I'd impress my employer by, hey, I'm a community thought leader. So here I am continuing that. Actually, my director is in the back right now. So, it kind of solidified my like, okay, lots of people are suffering. This is like a problem that people are like going through. So 1 week after launch, this was a conversation that I had with a PM. How can we edit the page? Because they're used to going into WordPress pages and just editing them. She thought that the React would just be there like any other WYSIWIG page that you build in WordPress. And all I had was basically the script tag that you use to load a React JavaScript page, and just a dummy div with root as the ID. And she's like, wait, I can't edit this? And I said, I can edit it for you. What do you need to change? I got it. And she's like, yeah, but then that has to go through QA and a whole dev cycle, and that needs to be put into the process pipeline, and that means we have to do another deploy. And we need that change today because it's a legal piece of text, and we have to take it down. So they had to take down the page because we couldn't modify it. So that was kind of like, that kind of broke my heart, and that crushed me. And shame on me for not getting full requirements, right? So oops. So what I started to realize is the rub. I couldn't take away, and I had been at other places where the PMs weren't that involved with the content. They weren't making content changes. These are like PMs on steroids. Like they are, they are editing JavaScript. These are people with no understanding of what they're typing at all. They're literally editing JavaScript code, and thankfully we have dev environments that they can destroy. So they wanted full control, and speaking to my VP, it's unfair for me to think that I can just take that away from them, right? They've hired me to do a job, so I need to help make their job better, not to shackle them down, right? So it didn't matter the technology. They were like, you want to use React? Fine. You want to use Drupal? Fine. Just, we still need to do the things that we do every day, and there is a certain level of changes that we need to be able to do outside of the development lifecycle. We need to be able to make content changes. So I went to my VP, and I was very honest with him, and at this point the VP we were smaller, so the VP was my direct report. And I went to him and I said, I really don't want to learn PHP. But I really love this company, and if I need to do it, I'll do it. But I really have this other thing, and I'd really like to do things differently here. And he supported me, and he said, and I told him, I said, honestly, I said, I didn't know that we were working on WordPress, and if I knew that this was a WordPress shop, I probably wouldn't have taken the job. And he said, I hope you're not quitting. So I said, no, I meant it in a way that if we were going to bring more engineers here and that they were going to be happy, that we needed to get off of this, because I could see how miserable the existing engineers were. They were very upset. It was very tiresome. Making things like text changes could take an entire day. It was very, very difficult. Very, very difficult, because you had to run the Docker and all that I had gone through. So I said, we need to get off this. And so he's like, I fully support you. Let's do it. Let's just, let's get the right R&D in place. You've got to get stakeholders to approve. Everyone in this company, not just developers, we're talking like 40 business people plus non-tech people were making edits in this WordPress. So I'm changing everyone's world, right? So I was rocking everyone. And so he said, okay, let's make a proof of concept. I'll give you 9 days. Go ahead and make the POC, right? And let's present it to our stakeholders that love WordPress the most. And so we had one stakeholder who was very important to the company, who loves WordPress and sees nothing wrong with it. So I had to convince him. I literally had pretty much the entire company on board except for this one stakeholder. And so I had to convince him that I could build something better than what we currently had and that we could pave a way forward. So I was only thinking about the developer and not really thinking about the user or thinking about the back-end users, which were the admins and the content creators. But I came up with this proof of concept, and I thought it was pretty neat. It was this page that you could see the actual page that you were editing below, and then there was like these form fields that you could go in and just kind of edit it. And it'd basically be every page would have like a companion admin that had all the fields that you could modify or enter in and then change things, and then the page below. And he just sort of glazed back like, I don't need this. Why? I don't need this. We didn't ask for this. Why are we even in this room? Like, he looked at the VP and the CTO and said, why do we need this? And me being an employee that had only been with the company for 2 months, sort of shrunk down into my chair. And I tried to put on a brave face, and I stood my course, and thankfully the VP is very charismatic at my company, and it's the same with the CTO, and they kind of carried the torch, and they could see that I was a bit crushed, but they championed it, but he said that we didn't cover enough of the requirements. Like, this is like 1% of what they currently use on WordPress. Like, you've missed the mark. You've really just barely scratched the surface. Go back to the drawing board. So he said, can you prove to me that there is not a third-party provider, CMS provider, that will suit our needs better than WordPress? Like, you have to prove without a shadow of a doubt that there is nobody out there that can do what you want to do. And so we came up with some simple product goals, and I wanted to keep the devs happy and the PMs happy. That was really the challenge. And I don't know if anyone has done any CMS shopping, but it seems to be that they're one-sided or the other. And what happens is the CMS is very WYSIWYG and not very developer-friendly, right? Or it's super like high-tech and super techy, and a PM would just like cringe at opening it. So I needed something that covered both. So it needed the complete WYSIWYG experience, like drag and drop building, content control and deployment outside the QA and DevOps cycle. And then A/B testing was like a plus. And then from the dev, it needed, I wanted the devs to be able to continue to develop in React, limited boilerplate, so it couldn't be this thing where like the React is now this Franken React, where it's just this ugly kind of, here's your component, and then like here's a bunch of higher order components, and then here's your wrapper and all this. So I said, no, it's gotta be really nimble, and I didn't wanna piss off the devs as well. And then easy to hand off to content creators. So by that I mean that the developer can build it first, and then the content creator can modify it, right? But that it's sort of an easy transition between the two. So I did some R&D, and I did my work and my due diligence, and I had to write a long report to show that there wasn't anything that could facilitate that need. And this is not to say that these are bad. I think these are all amazing tools. Screwvito's pretty freaking awesome. I got a lot of inspiration from Screwvito. React Studio, if you guys haven't seen React Studio, it's like Photoshop for React. Like, it literally looks like Photoshop. And if your company needs something specific, they will build a version of it just for your company. So they're pretty nice. Sanity is cool, but I think it was too simple. It just didn't have enough of the features that we wanted. Contentful was actually my first choice. I'm sure there's probably some people in here who have already implemented Contentful as well. I implemented Contentful at my last employer. That didn't fly because it didn't have the WYSIWYG, but it's great for like localization and translation and stuff like that. Gatsby, of course, is pretty awesome, but a lot of our stuff is very dynamic. We've got live sales, so a static site wasn't really going to work for us. So then we discussed features, right? Once we've eliminated that a third party wasn't going to work, they said, okay, that's fine. Let's start to iron out the features that we need for an MVP, right? And so, as you guys know, MVPs start as like, we need a word that's bigger than epic. It's like an epic of epic proportions, right? And this was, I was getting PMs, and the director of product built this Excel sheet so that all the PMs could put in their wish list of features that they wanted. And it became this, I don't know, 200-cell wish list of things that they wanted the CMS to do. They were just as excited as I was, but they were looking for a miracle. So, and I was the only developer that had bandwidth to work on this, so no one could help me. So these were kind of like just the things that were, and I tried to make these kind of bigger and smaller to show kind of like what was more important. Definitely dynamic text, CSS, Markdown, HTML. And I felt a little bit like this, looking at all the features and how I was going to get it all working together. And I sort of sat like this for 2 sprints. And I was trying to solve everything all at once. So what I did was I ended up here, and my VP came to me and said, let's talk about vertical slices. And vertical slices was great because, sorry, I think my computer's playing music. Um, so vertical slices was this thing that I felt was his way of softly saying, I don't think you can do this. And I took it that way, but that wasn't really what he meant. And if you ever meet the VP at FabFitFun, he's really interesting. He's also a fantasy writer, so he has a way of articulating kind of like how he wants to take you on this journey. So he said, I want you to just look at it and can you build me an MVP with one feature? Just text. That's it. What's the smallest MVP that you could build in under 2 days? And I thought that that was like the only thing that he was going to let me build. That I was like, no, but we need all these features. It needs to do this. It needs to do that. It needs to do all these things. And so I went along with him and I said, okay, all right, I'll do this and I'm going to knock it out of the water. I'm going to like kill this vertical slice and show that I've got, spare change and time to do all the other features that were sort of in my head and the things that I was dreaming of. And what was surprising about this, the vertical slice works in a way that rather than looking at the front end and building all the front, and then having another team member build all of the back, and then having someone build all the data, right? And then trying to integrate all those things all together, right? You just work in one flow, right? You've got the front end that comes down, you've got it connect to a microservice, it writes to the database, and your database is super small. It's literally a table with one field, maybe two for an ID, and that's it. And then you deploy it, and then you get the whole, you talk to DevOps, and how does that get to S3 and everything, and you just push it all the way down the pipe. And you've got this really thin app that just does one thing. It's got one button, and it lets you edit text. And the VP was really jazzed when I got all the way down there, and he's like, how long did that take you? And I was like, 2 days. And he was like, see, did you get it? So we went through, he's like, okay, what's next? What's the next vertical slice? What can you think of as another thing that you could finish in 1 day? So I was like, okay, I want to do images. He's like, great, do that in a day. And the great thing about this is that I got more features done in such a short amount of time that I was able to show progress almost every other day. So it wasn't this pie in the sky idea anymore. It was a much bigger thing that that they could see materialize, that it was coming for us. I was doing deploys like almost every other day. So I was getting through these features and I was almost like, well, here's this other thing that we thought we never could do. Here's this other thing. Here's this other thing. So let me show you guys the actual thing. So here we go. Here it is. Sorry. Let me just go to the home page so you can see it. So what I ended up building was this composer. And we have several pods at FabFitFun. And so we have like the style team and the shop and the mobile and the loyalty, community, TV. And so I basically gave every team a space to work in, right? So that everyone could separate their content. Whereas the WordPress, everything lives together in this giant mess. So when we go to the content, then there's a list of content items that are in the page. Each of these content pieces are represented as a spec, and a spec is basically a JSON configuration that React can read and then generate components on the fly. It's basically, think of it as an array of components that it grabs from an array of React components, and then it just tells it where to put it. So when we look at the page, this is the editor. And we've got responsive design. So each developer can develop for the individual layouts. They can go into grid edit mode, and they can drag and drop and resize. And these are all React components. And so I click on the components. For each component, I have static props. And these are arguments that the React developer has exposed to the PM, right? So I've taken a component and I've said these are the things that I can edit. And so as I go through these components, I can then start to modify them. And I have built-in actions here that basically align with our style guide. So no one has to feel like, oh, what font am I supposed to use? Or what text size can I use? All of these are tied in with the style guide. Once I'm ready with it, I can deploy. I pick my environment where I want to deploy the code to. Currently, you put in your name because I haven't built auth into it yet. And I ship it. And that just deployed to dev right now. So that change actually went live. And what it did was it pulled the JSON and it put it on our CDN. And this is basically it. And most of it is just the type of JSON that's generated by React Grid Layout, which is an open source component that I suggest that you guys take a look at. So all it does is it's just basically a JSON builder of React components. So, sorry, am I out of time? Oh, sorry, okay. So I'll wrap this up, but basically what I wanted to show at the end was just the very last of it. So it's just a React application. It goes to a Java microservice. It writes to a CMS. And these are my open source heroes. If you guys want to take a look at any of these libraries, I think they were great. I couldn't have built this without these libraries. And then I'll just leave you guys with this lasting quote. If you aim at nothing, you will hit it every time. So, thank you.